And we should be live.
Amazing.
Hello. Or at least two of us should be live. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know about Peter when he's going to be joining us. He's doing
momentarily, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we are live.
Yeah, people can see us. Hi. This is our first live stream, so we're kind of like getting a few things together. Yeah.
Bear with us. And my video is backwards. I'm like touching my
hair.
hair.
Mine is too. I can't figure out which way my hair is going. Seems flipped. Peter just texted us something alarming maybe 100 seconds ago that said no devices are being recognized. So I think that's the problem that he is figuring out right now. Let's see if we have a text from him.
Yeah, I'm sending him a link.
Oh, okay.
Get into the stream. Yeah, sorry. We're still figuring it all out, but we are excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks everybody for being here. Michael, is there a way for us to tell like how many people are in here? That you know?
Not that I know of. I saw like I think a few hundred on YouTube. I think if I go to YouTube I can see it.
Oh, okay.
550 watching.
Are watching right now?
Yep.
That's incredible. Hi, everybody.
Yeah, exciting. Good turnout.
Holy shit. Yeah, Zoom problems, celebrities just like us.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
Podcast, Supreme Court podcasters just like us.
Everybody who requested it, here's some ice clinking in a glass for you.
I'm sure I'll say this multiple times over the course of the evening because it is bothering me. As many of you know, I don't really drink alcohol. So I don't have a drink with me this evening, but I also so stupidly quit smoking marijuana like 6 months ago. So here I am just fucking, it's water, just raw dogging this end of term.
Reality. Raw dogging reality.
That's right. So yeah.
I know things are bleak right now, but I'm seeing some self-harm jokes in the chat, and I just want to say no self-harm, guys. Let's avoid the self-harm and the self-harm jokes. I know it's bleak, but it's not all bleak.
Yeah.
I still remain optimistic about the future.
Yeah, I have a lot of hope. Remember, hope is part of like a necessary part of building a better future, right? So
yeah, exactly. And I think it's important, like just as a practice, to sort of like practice being optimistic.
Yeah.
Practice being hopeful. I don't want to sound too much like put a little sticky note on your mirror that says you are a valuable person. Or
affirmations, yeah.
Affirmations. Because I know as well as anyone that the limits of that with serious mental health issues. But that being said, it is like a habit, reminding yourself that things can get better and there are things you can do to make the world better. And we will talk about them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Support the orcas in their mission against the rich.
This is a pro orca podcast.
Yeah.
This is an orca obsessive podcast, I think we could even say.
Yeah. I'm more of like a bottlenose dolphin type of guy, but I love porpoises in general, and that includes orcas.
I think we have a couple. One big question, Michael. What is Michael drinking?
I am drinking whiskey. Uncle Nearest 1884 bourbon. Oh, look who's here.
Well.
Look, I'm not a technologist. I'm not a nerd. Okay.
Yeah. You're barely a lawyer. So.
I'm a sports guy. an athlete.
He can throw a football 40 yards on a fucking rope, man. But
Absolutely.
ask him to open Zoom.
No,
not
ask
happening.
me to use a piece of technology designed for anyone to understand with weeks' notice. No.
Well, welcome, Peter. We're just chit-chatting. We're talking a little bit about being hopeful for the future despite it all. Rachel is monitoring the chat and feeding us some questions, and we just talked about what Michael is drinking, and that I'm taking this stone cold sober, raw dog in this Supreme Court term.
Yeah.
People want to know if the shelf is up, Peter. I think I know the answer.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely not.
Absolutely not. I also want you to know that I do know my audio sounds fucked, and that's something that I had to switch computers. I don't have time to figure this out. I'm sorry, guys. This is day
You're
one,
fine.
hour one streaming stuff.
Yeah. You're totally fine. And
don't worry, it's only our biggest audience on any video thing ever, with 877 people tuning in right now.
Wow, amazing, y'all. That is
It's
so
really
fucking
exciting,
cool.
guys. We're so happy you're all here.
Okay, should we jump in? It is the last day of the fucking Supreme Court 2023 term. It was a doozy today. Got two really fucked up cases. Yesterday got another super fucked up case. I think we're going to talk about all three over the course of the evening, but maybe we start with well, first of all, questions, things you want answered, all of that. Get the chat going. Producer Rachel is kind of monitoring your questions and feeding to us. And so maybe we start with just like kind of talking about general impressions of like the term.
Yeah, because there was a phase a few weeks back where everyone is like, all the haters proven wrong. It is a 3-3-3 court. Things are back to normal.
Right.
Robert's in control. Right.
Yes.
And I feel like I sort of started to believe it myself, where I was like, maybe they're alternating years, right? Where it's like good year, bad year, and this is just a good year, or at least an okay year. And I was ready to sort of lose my mind, though, at the media coverage that like would probably never touch Sackett, for example, the clean water case.
Yep.
But what it turns out was happening was just that they were backloading all the miserable shit, which I think is, I have to say, on student loans is worse than experts were anticipating. Like, I think the common refrain was, this is going to get tossed on standing. Dark Brandon rising. We're good. Don't even worry about it.
After oral arguments, I thought at least Amy Coney Barrett was a fourth vote with the libs. And it seemed like both Kavanaugh and Roberts were like sort of curious. More so Kavanaugh than Roberts, but both of them were like, sort of like, I don't know about this. So yeah, I think that was surprising. I think also looking back on it, it's like Moore v. Harper was very scary in like a sort of risk analysis sense, because the downsides were so extreme, regardless.
Maybe just say, Michael, which one Moore v. Harper is.
That's the independent state legislature doctrine. That was the insurrection case, basically. It's technically about gerrymandering, but it was the legal theory behind we do what we want. And that was one where I think, even right after oral argument, people, and even before oral argument, people were like a little like, I don't know, this seems like a little too much for the court. But still, it's like, even you don't know. And if they did rule for like, the North Carolina state legislature, like that downside risk is like tremendous, right? So
and the upside is the status quo. It's just normal operation of democracy.
So that felt like a win, but it was a win that was like, should have been more baked into the calculus. And so if you look at the other like high profile cases, it's really just the Voting Rights Act case, Milligan, which they clearly took to overturn. And then did, I think, get a little cowed. Maybe somebody showed them some social science research about how restricting voting rights actually activates voters and increases turnout.
And they're like, wait, that's not what we wanted. No,
yeah,
no.
exactly. A lot of things could have happened there, but it does feel like overall, at the end of the day, the Voting Rights Act is already like severely hobbled, and they didn't just further kill it.
Right.
And they can piecemeal attack it, like, you know, the ballot harvesting case last year, Bronovich, or was that 2 years ago? I can't remember. But you know, they can piecemeal attack voting rights. They don't need to go at Section 2 if they don't want to.
Yeah,
they have tons of options.
And I think there's like a little bit of like a, you know, Captain Phillips, I'm the captain now thing, where they're like, you know what, like, we're in charge. You want to put together an electoral coalition around court reform, go for it. But otherwise, we're going to keep doing our shit. Like, we're going to strike. Right. You're not going to get student debt relief.
It must be very reassuring that Joe Biden goes on television and says that they're not going to do court reform every 2 days.
Right. Exactly.
That must feel great. If you're Roberts, it's like, that's good. I like to hear it. You know,
we'll give you the wins on voting rights, because who gives a what are you going to do with the voting?
Yeah. It's like when your wife says, I love you. It's like, I knew, but I also needed to hear it. You know, thank you.
Important question from one Michael Hobbs. Why can I not listen to this on 1.5 speed? Michael Hobbs.
Great question. Is he a Patreon subscriber? Are we questions?
Hobbs, you just have to be a little more patient. If you wait until we post it, then you can listen to it on 1.5 speed. But
that's right.
After the fact. But if you're catching it live, you just gotta deal with us and our rambling selves.
There's voting rights that like went okay, right? In terms of like, at least we keep the status quo. They didn't like completely fuck shit up. Independent state legislature was fine. And then
I do want to moderate that a little bit, because it was fine, except there was one is the first time the Supreme Court has ever favorably cited Bush v. Gore, which is sort of concerning.
Grimace emoji.
I thought it was limited to the specific fact.
And you know, Kavanaugh wrote a concurrence. This is a guy who joined the majority in full, but he wrote a concurrence to like emphasize that like his view aligns with Rehnquist in his concurrence in Bush v. Gore, which we talked about in our a couple times, is a very batshit crazy concurrence. And fits with the paradigm of the Supreme Court arrogating power to itself. They are still reserving the right to be the last word on state election laws, at least in regards to federal elections. You know, their standard is very vague. It's not clear if they'll ever get 5 votes for it. It will have nothing to do with how the standard is formulated and everything to do with the facts of the case, really, for being realistic. But it should be concerning that there's still like, even in this victory, they are like, they're certainly not ruling out like doing Bush v. Gore again or something worse. Like they have not categorically ruled that out at all.
Totally.
It's just like sort of telling the Republican Party to pump the brakes on some of the insurrection stuff is how I read this.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't play well.
So Ray, you were asking about like the other potential wins, right? Or like non-losses, maybe we should call them.
I think the other one is ICWA being upheld.
ICWA.
It was probably the clearest dub. I mean, you know, because I think Merrill v. Milligan, you can say, or sorry, it wasn't Merrill anymore. But you know, you can Allen v. Milligan. I think you can say that there are enough asterisks in there that, you know, it's not a sort of 100% win, but the ICWA case, hard to find too many problems, especially when the downside was the end of, you know, a very seminal piece of tribal rights legislation.
Right. Right. I mean, then you turn around and you have Navajo Nation v. Arizona, or Arizona v. Navajo Nation, which basically said that Navajo Nation doesn't have water rights to a bunch of land that sovereignty should, you would think logically, give them water rights to. We'll certainly do an episode on that, but I think maybe we can return to kind of overall ideas about like, was this term good, bad, worse
I
than
also want to
others?
flag Glacier Northwest. Another sort of like, it was an 8-1. Jackson dissented and she was right. But that's the case with the union
That's labor,
leaving concrete in the trucks while they struck, and then the like management seeking damages.
Right. Suing the union.
Right. And the downside there was like very significant damages to the right to strike, maybe like just the complete 100% undermining of the right to strike by basically saying you can sue unions for whatever damage the strike causes, which of course negates the whole purpose of the strike. But they limited it to the facts in a way that I didn't particularly find compelling, but is certainly like better than the other possible outcome. And a lot of people think that they brought Kagan and Sotomayor along by basically offering the better, the narrower decision rather than going all the way.
I want to respond to a few comments from the chat. One, what was the dog's name? The one on the bed was Charlie. There's a little one named Cupcake who's behind me right now. I don't know if I can get her. Somebody else said Peter's significantly more handsome than I thought, and I assume that's because you already knew I was really handsome. So yeah, that was like Peter I thought was ugly and he's good looking. Michael I knew was hot and he's hot.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
That's right.
Yeah.
I also want to say I think, Reed, did you add not a nerd as my little
Oh no, I added that.
You did. Okay. I didn't do it. I would never I don't feel like it needs to be said that I'm cool, that I'm a cool dude.
Peter, that is literally a quote.
Clearly not true.
That's what you said when you came on the podcast. You said, I'm not a nerd.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess that does undermine my position that I would never say it.
Let's talk maybe student loans. We have a question about Biden's alternative route, which was announced today. Do we think it'll work? But I think first, like maybe just a little rundown.
It's a big no from me.
Yeah, but maybe just like a little rundown of like what was the holding in the student loans case, and then what Biden said today. I actually didn't catch it. Did you watch, Michael?
I watched.
Michael watched for sure.
Okay. So what happened in student loans? This is actually, of the 3 in the past 48 hours, student loans is the case that I actually know the least about.
Sure. What happened was this was another case in the courts. There's another dog sighting, by the way. There's Cupcake, in case you guys are curious. Making sure there are no coyotes in the backyard. It was another major questions case, like West Virginia v. EPA, where the court said basically, yeah, technically, if you read the law as it's written, Biden could do this, but it's a really big thing that he did, and so we don't think he should be able to do it. I really wish it was more than that, but it wasn't. Coney Barrett wrote a concurrence where she compared it to someone telling a babysitter, leaving a babysitter a credit card and saying, make sure the kids have fun. And then the babysitter driving the kids like out of state to
an
amusement park for a 2-day trip to like Disney World or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so who am I in the metaphor for having received student loans? I'm the babysitter.
You would be the kids.
Or the kids?
You'd be the kids.
The babysitter is the administrative agency.
Yes, it's the Department of Education.
Department of Education?
That's
the
how you
babysitter.
know your metaphor
Okay.
fucking
Congress
rules.
is the parents.
The Department of Education is a babysitter in your metaphor.
Yeah, Congress is the parents. The Department of Education is the babysitter, and the court is stepping in here to tell the babysitter, "Whoa, you can't take the kids to Disney World."
Right.
Yeah. Also, what was the point? Like, I don't really.
It is a moronic.
Now I don't have kids, so maybe I'm just missing this, and maybe this is like the worst three people to discuss this. But would you ever just give a babysitter
Amy
a credit
Coney Barrett
card
has like 15, right?
right?
So,
I mean, she knows more about
she's
being
an
a
expert.
parent than we do. That's for sure. But would you ever just hand the babysitter a credit card and be like, make sure the kids have a good time? Like, what kind of a fucking thing? What is she supposed to do with that?
right, exactly.
Be like, order a pizza. That's a normal
Right.
thing to tell a babysitter.
Yeah, make sure the kids have fun is actually a psychotic thing
It's
to
an
say
insane
to
thing to tell a
Yeah.
babysitter.
a babysitter while handing them a credit card.
Right.
Like,
it's like here's $5,000.
So what did Biden say that we could do about this, if anything?
so Biden did this under something called the HEROES Act, which was passed after 9/11, which modified the HEA, the Higher Education Act. The Higher Education Act allows for certain loan modifications or loan forgiveness. The HEROES Act said that in times of crisis, the Secretary of Education can change the HEA, waive or modify provisions in the HEA, to make sure that borrowers aren't worse off at the end of the crisis than they were at the start. And this was originally with like troops in mind, I think, but then Congress like re-upped it after it was set to sunset in September 2003, basically being like, no, this is a good thing in general. And sure enough, then a big national crisis came along and a lot of people were set to be made worse off at the end of it, right? The economy has been completely upended and restructured, and people changed jobs, lost jobs, got new jobs,
To
whatever.
add
Like,
some color here, Trump, the pause of student loan repayment was done initially under Trump under the HEROES Act. So using the HEROES Act to do student loan shit
uncontroversial,
not controversial at all.
but they said this is too big. This is a major question. I know this because I see it on Fox News all the time.
Yeah.
And
If you look at the question, you'll know that it's major.
It's major. I feel it.
It's major vibes.
So the thing is, the HEA itself still exists and still gives the Department of Education authority to cancel student loans. The thing is, because the HEROES Act is a statute that is designed for emergencies, it allows for faster and more decisive rulemaking processes, this is administrative law shit, but using the HEROES Act allowed Biden to do it very quickly. Going through the HEA is going to be long because it's not just the normal administrative rulemaking process, which takes long. It's called negotiated rulemaking, where you have to like bring stakeholders in first and then negotiate a rule. And then if you reach an agreement, then it goes into normal notice and comment, public rulemaking. It's plausible they could have a final rule by the election, just in time for the Supreme Court to put a stop to that too, depending on how narrow or expansive the rule is. I think if they go pretty narrow, the court might like leave it alone, depending on how narrow it is. But I think this is a perfect example of like, they already went about as narrow as possible under the HEROES Act. $10,000, $20,000 for Pell Grant people. Not a big thing, right? Like not a massive, compared to the size of outstanding student loans is small. For a lot of people, it was practically nothing. And a lot of people didn't even qualify. So,
and then you have to apply. Like it's not guaranteed.
Negotiating with yourself over this in the hopes of passing Supreme Court muster, I don't know, is the best practice. What this reminded me of actually was I was just reading about a critique of the Lochner era, which was a turn of the century, about 100 years ago, similar era of conservative court striking down lots of regulation. And they were saying that the court didn't strike down every economic regulation, every labor regulation, but part of the problem was that there was no predictability about what would and wouldn't survive. And so all these laws would go through these like arduous processes where they would negotiate with themselves and pare them down to nonsense. I was reading it, I was like, this is very familiar. This feels like right now, like you're describing right now, and what happened with this case and what might happen again in the next year with student loan debt relief.
So I think it would be, we're getting a lot of questions about 303, and so maybe we move to that.
Sure.
Although we have an important question about student loans that I think we should wrap up with. Can President Biden mint a coin and use it to pay off everybody's debt? I like the creativity. I like the energy that is brought in this question.
It would depend exactly how he did it. Because if he just did cash handoffs.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I'm not sure, because I think spending has to be authorized, right? So like, I think he has like pretty broad minting powers, but what he does with it is
all of a sudden you're bound by the Constitution.
I think he should put my face on the coin and then
Well, what we were just talking about this, a lot of the like theoretical solutions to debt forgiveness are, what if the Biden administration acted so quickly that you can't get a TRO, meaning it can't be challenged in court? Really, it's already done. It can be challenged in court, but it will be after the fact, which legally makes it much harder to undo.
Politically makes it much harder to undo.
And politically and logistically, right? Because in the nature of the injunction changes. But that has always been the sort of thought on the left. What if they had just snapped their fingers and, so to speak, and erased the debt? We were just discussing this right before the stream. It might take some like logistical doing, but theoretically that does seem to be like what would work, or at least what end runs around the Supreme Court initially. I think if it was done now, the Supreme Court would be so annoyed that they might try to attack it regardless. But
But yeah, I think it's like, it seems counterintuitive that they can do this, because the idea that the government one day would just be like, hey, we knocked $20,000 off your debt, check your balance, is so foreign. But there's no like reason why they can't do that under the statute, right? Like, it just requires some planning and forward thinking and understanding of the political dynamics of the court, and being like, look, once we do this, people's accounts are going to be closed. You're going to have to, command that like Mohila or whoever reopen accounts and shit like that would make it would piss off the Supreme Court for sure if you put them in that position. But they might be pissed because they feel like they can't get out of it, right? That you've painted them into a corner. But the administration doesn't think that way because they're not really engaging with the reality of the court. That being said, I will say they've improved on this. Like, their response to Biden v. Nebraska, the student loan case, much better than the response to Dobbs. Clear they had
Dobbs, this. They knew what was happening because of the leak.
They had a fucking month.
I don't even want to talk about it. Let's move on.
Yeah. Okay. Can we sue the Supreme Court? No. Judges have immunity for all of the work that they do as judges. Let's talk about 303 Creative.
Yes.
And I'll read the question to just set us up, but I might start with talking about this because again, now that student loans case is out of the way, we've done away with the subject that I don't know anything about. So somebody says, I'm begging someone to explain 303 Creative. What does it mean for the decision if the basis for the case was falsified? I'm not a lawyer or a law student. This is 100% breaking my brain. Please help. We are here for you. So
Folks,
let's talk 303.
We got a great podcast for you coming out. Tuesday morning.
We're dropping a 303 up on Tuesday.
I think they come out usually around 4 a.m. Eastern time on Tuesday.
Stay up.
Yeah, we recorded an emergency episode on 303. So DeShaney v. Winnebago was the case that was going to be coming out for our episode on Tuesday. It's now going to be 303 Creative. So we just talked a lot about this, and there will be more details. But what happened in 303 on a basic level is that Gorsuch, writing for the majority, this was 6-3, it was 6-3. Gorsuch, writing for the majority, says that it is a violation of Lori Smith, who is the business owner of 303 Creative. It is a violation of her freedom of speech, her First Amendment freedom of speech rights, if she has to express herself through her business in a way that she doesn't believe in because of her religious beliefs. So the idea, and we'll get to I'm going to get to the fake basis for the case in just a second, but the idea is that there is an anti-discrimination law in Colorado which prohibits discrimination in public accommodations, businesses that serve the public. It prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, creed, but it also includes sexual orientation. So a private business can't discriminate against a gay couple, for instance, in Colorado. But Lori Smith is the head of 303 Creation, which is like a graphic design and website company. She says that even though she hasn't actually been asked by a gay couple as of yet to design a wedding website for them, and even though she actually does not create wedding websites yet, she's just thinking about entering that business. She says that in the future, she's afraid that she's going to be forced by this Colorado anti-discrimination law to create a website for a gay couple because she doesn't believe in gay marriage.
And she says that when she does these wedding pages, she's going to do a little blurb, like write a couple sentences about every couple. And that when she does that for a gay couple, that will be sort of forcible expression of a sort, right? Like her whole thing is that the government in her mind is forcing her to serve gay people, and therefore forcing her to like express approval of gay people by putting their wedding on a page.
Right. Fully Delulu, fully Delulu. But it's been reported in the past like 48 hours. And it is important, but I'll also like give a caveat about this. It's been reported in the past 48 hours that at some point in the lawsuit, not in the initial filing, but months later, the Alliance Defending Freedom, fucking monsters, but they represented Lori Smith and they brought this case all the way to the Supreme Court. The Alliance Defending Freedom, months after the initial lawsuit, started referring to a request from a gay couple that Lori had actually received. Some reporting in the past 48 hours, we talk about this in the episode, has shown that she very likely did not receive a request. This request was very likely doctored and made up. It lists a real person named Stewart, who supposedly got in touch with Lori to ask about designing some wedding stuff for his wedding. The Stewart person exists. A reporter called him like a couple days ago, and it turns out he's a straight married man in California who has never gotten in contact with Lori Smith for anything, is in fact a graphic designer in his own right, and has no reason to get in touch with Lori Smith. So there's this aspect of the case that like the Alliance Defending Freedom and Lori Smith submitted at some point evidence that was almost surely falsified, right? Just created from whole cloth.
A little bit of fraud in the court. That's I've done it myself, you know.
When you're wheeling and dealing.
if you're a true operator, a legal operator, you're on the edges of the rules.
I watched Better Call Saul. I know how it is.
So so there's this aspect of this like falsified thing, and I think a lot of people have questioned today since 303 came out, like, holy shit, the Supreme Court is deciding a case that had falsified evidence. Like this didn't even happen.
It's defunct. It's null.
Right. Unfortunately, by the time the case got to the Supreme Court, the Alliance Defending Freedom was not litigating based on Lori Smith having gotten a request already. This was purely hypothetical. The only legal question that the Supreme Court was dealing with and ruled on today was whether in the future, if Lori Smith is asked to do this, whether it would be a violation of her freedom of speech rights.
Right.
So the fact of whether she got a request or not was actually not legally relevant. So
they work their way
it just
around
shows they're
it.
shitty. Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it does. People were asking, like, how does she have standing? I mean, it's fake. It's fake. Missouri didn't have standing. She didn't have standing. Doesn't matter. You're out 10 grand, and discrimination sort of legal. The court has decided to abandon standing pretty readily.
Yeah. I'm not defending the court. I don't want anybody to take this as defending the court because it's bullshit. But
Michael, noted court lover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of standing requirements are quote unquote prudential, which means that the court sort of imposes them on themselves and can be waived by the court.
Yeah.
And there is a history of being a little more relaxed in the free speech context. The idea that, like, oh, this law is
because of chilling of
speech. But this feels like a very bullshitty version of that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I mean, we're on the record saying standing's not real, and that cuts both ways.
Yeah.
I never get mad about it too much in either direction. Are they inconsistent? Yes. Is it all fake regardless in every single direction? Yeah.
Exactly.
Cesar Garcia says in the chat, I've seen her designs. No gay would want her to design anything. I want the record to show I made this joke in the recording before seeing that comment. So nobody, when you hear it on Tuesday, be like, Michael stole that from Cesar.
These jokes are
not true.
Hurtful to frumpier gays, I think. But
I think a really important takeaway that probably nobody really currently in media talks about enough, in certainly not in like legacy Supreme Court media, is the Alliance Defending Freedom. Like, I think it is not Lori Smith, though Lori Smith is a stupid fucking bigot. It is not Lori Smith who brought this case. It's not Lori Smith who is funding all kinds of these cases across the country, no matter what circuit you're in. It's not Lori Smith who is writing model legislation to replace anti-discrimination laws or enact anti-trans and anti-gay statutes in state legislatures. That is the Alliance Defending Freedom. Those are dark money organizations, incredibly well funded. We say it on the podcast, but these are the fucking monsters behind the conservative legal movement, behind corruption at the Supreme Court, behind paying off justices, right? And it's not just Lori Smith in Denver, Colorado, and her wedding website, right? These people are also, I think I said this on the podcast, but these organizations, and this is linked to like the fake claim about her getting a request. These organizations are not only incredibly strategic with where they file their lawsuits, in front of what judges, in what circuits, like they're incredibly strategic about that. They're also incredibly strategic in shopping for a plaintiff, right? So there was reporting I read today that Lori Smith, if you go to her website now, there's a bunch of Christian shit. A few months before filing this lawsuit, Lori's website said nothing about her being a Christian, right? She had not received any, she obviously had not received any request that went against her religious beliefs. This is a plaintiff that was found by the Alliance Defending Freedom, right? Shaped and molded into the plaintiff that they wanted so that they could bring this exact claim and this case, right? So fuck them. Fuck them.
I think funding to the tune of $100 million a year.
Yeah.
So this is just dark money bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
If you live in the same district as Lori in Colorado, call your local law enforcement agency and report perjury in the morning.
Yeah.
Tomorrow.
No, I think the state of Colorado can do it. Yeah. I don't, nobody needs to call Denver PD over it.
Call them. I have an emergency. Turn to page A3 in the New York Times political section.
Standoff. It all ends with a standoff with police. between
somebody did ask, can the state of Colorado seek Rule 11 sanctions against the Alliance Defending Freedom for pulling this bullshit with like the submitting fake evidence, basically?
I think they can go further than that. I think
Yeah,
they
I don't see
can.
why not.
I'm almost positive suborning perjury is a crime in Colorado, as it is
Right.
everywhere in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also federally. Yeah.
Like, I'm sure they can pursue criminal charges if they want to. Yeah.
And then one that takes us, I think, back to a discussion about Gorsuch, which we also touch on in the 303 episode. How does 303 square with Bostock, right? And could Hobby Lobby now fire its gay employees without issue? Right.
So a couple. So first of all, I think people
I'll talk about how Gorsuch wrote both, right?
Okay. I think that people need to understand the scope of 303. It's ostensibly limited to expressive conduct, right? She's saying that, like, I'm expressing myself through these wedding websites, and if I make a wedding website for a gay marriage, I will be expressing some element of approval for that marriage when in fact I do not approve. That is not the same thing, at least according to the court, as just firing someone because they're gay or just turning away a customer because they're gay. The court would say that someone going to buy a sandwich and getting turned away because of their sexual orientation is different than this.
Right.
We talk about this in the episode. I'm not sure that it's quite as different as they're saying. The reason being that I think acts of discrimination are expressive. They are an expression of a belief that one race, one sexual orientation is lesser or should be separate, etc. So I don't really know how in good faith you separate these things out, but the court doesn't view them as the same thing. The court views discrete, I don't like you because of your sexual orientation, discrimination as unacceptable, whereas this sort of like expressive arena provides a gray area such that there's leeway where someone can say, I don't want to work with a gay couple in this circumstance. So it's not just a blank check to discriminate against gay people.
In the chat, Miranda Starr says making a Subway sandwich is expressive, and that's true, but it's expressive on the part of the customer because you make it your way. You decide. So. I'll be right back. I'm gonna get some ice.
Okay. I was gonna talk about Gorsuch writing both.
I'll talk about Bostock.
Happy to. Okay, I do want to say back to the Alliance Defending Freedom and these shitty organizations. Somebody said it's not a question, but somebody said I write an Iowa politics blog, and in 2022, somebody from the Pacific Legal Foundation, they're the ones who brought Sackett from this term as well, Sackett v. EPA. Someone from Pacific Legal Foundation cold called me, hoping I would help them find plaintiffs to challenge Iowa's gender balance law for commissions. So this is exactly how these people operate, right? They have people on the ground everywhere looking for where they want to file their cases, what claims they want to make.
What's interesting is that the lefty legal organizations, I don't want to say that they don't plaintiff shop, because to a degree they do. You want good plaintiffs.
Absolutely.
But lefty legal orgs tend to have plaintiffs come to them, in my experience, a lot more. Whereas the right wingers, I think, start from the law they want to challenge and just go hunting.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's incorrect, and I just don't have vision into like high level ACLU shit. But that was my experience with every lefty org that I've ever dealt with. Is to some degree they wait for cases to come to them. They might, they play tactical games for sure, but they're not out there cold calling.
Right.
JJ in the chat mentioned something that we actually didn't mention in the episode. As short, we only had a couple hours, but it is worth mentioning here, which is that the state of Colorado stipulated a lot of this stuff
to a bunch of stuff. Yes.
Which in the law means like a lot of times what you fight over in court is like facts. Did X happen? Did so and so carry a gun on him or whatever. And when you stipulate, you say, we're not contesting that fact. And
Right.
they stipulated, they didn't contest on the idea that what Lori Smith is doing is expressive conduct,
Was expressive.
which
Yeah.
very much shaped the issues in this case. Very questionable legal strategy. I have no insight into why they would take that tack.
I think, I mean, generally,
I don't know, but
generally they just do it when they want to focus up and
Yeah.
not get bogged down. I think they probably lose on that anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I think it might have, you know, it's easy to like nitpick and be like, well, yeah, if they had thought this, but look, like we say, the court will find a way to get the answer they want, one way or another. If they wanted to protect gay rights here, Sotomayor write a great opinion explaining how to do it.
Yeah.
You know, like anybody could have joined her. There was nothing wrong doctrinally, factually, whatever with her opinion. It's great. So yeah, we can question the trial strategy, but I don't know that it was determinative either way.
Yeah.
Okay, we saw Michael's pets. We're having a request for pets. We saw Michael's dogs, Charlie and Cupcake. Peter has Cosmo, the cat. But she's not around, is she, Peter?
No,
And
nor would
Cosmo-
she partake in any.
Right. Cosmo is
shenanigans.
also not the type of lady to you know, just be picked up and put in front of the camera
Absolutely
either. And I currently don't have a pet. I was just cat sitting. My friend was abroad for like 6 weeks, and I had the cat. If you're an Arch Enemy subscriber and you're in the Slack, you have seen many pictures of Velvet, who is a gorgeous Siamese. But Velvet just went home to my friend Katie. Yes, literally yesterday. But I wonder if did I send y'all, Peter and Michael, did I send y'all the picture of the orange kitten?
No, I don't think
No.
so. You sent us some pet possibilities in the past. We were
Okay,
going to adopt
no.
a pet on stream.
Yeah. Let's have a sidebar here where we just talk about whatever cat you're going to adopt.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So I had Velvet for like 6 weeks. She was so perfect. I was like, you know what? I'm fucking ready. Like, I want a cat. And so I'm thinking like, I want a kitten. And if I'm going to get a kitten, then I might as well fucking get two. Right.
Yeah,
like,
that's
because
right.
then they're friends and
And
they
they're
kind of
friends.
take care of each other. Right.
Mhm.
And
They'll
so
feed each other. It's fine.
yeah. They scoop each other's litter. That's my understanding. And so in my head, I was like, ideally, I want an orange one and I want a black one. How cute would that be? And then all of a sudden, my friend Hannah is fostering a tiny baby orange kitten.
Oh,
I'm pulling up the photo. I wonder if this will show. Look at this fucking baby.
That is tiny.
that is tiny. Really cute.
Yeah. Nice.
I'm getting that cat. So yeah, she's too baby to even be like, she needs like maybe another 3 weeks or something, but perfect timing. I'm ready. My home is ready.
Nice.
It's time for me to have a tiny orange baby cat.
Absolutely.
And then I'll probably just go to the shelter and get another kitten at the same time. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah. Okay. Back to the law, maybe? Should we back to the shitty Supreme Court? Should we maybe talk affirmative action?
Let's do it.
Yeah. Not that we want to feel
God.
like it, not that it's fun.
This is the one I know the least about, I think. I saw that link, that opinion link, and I was like, I don't know
rough.
if I can do this.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can.
Trying to give you guys vision into my dogs battling on the bed.
Yeah.
Me.
This is a big part of 5-4 is Michael's dogs in general.
So I can tee up some thoughts on affirmative action. So, John Roberts writes the majority. I think you could see that coming from like a mile away. I feel like last year we were like, oh yeah, John Roberts is going to write that opinion and it's going to invalidate, strike down affirmative action, right? Mm-hmm. John Roberts was in the dissent in Fisher, which was the prior big affirmative action case from the Supreme Court, which actually upheld the University of Texas's affirmative action system plan, which just used race as basically a factor of a factor in a very small percentage of admissions, something like 1 to 2% of people who were admitted to UT were sort of under this system in which race could be considered as a factor of a factor. So, the affirmative action was already incredibly limited. So what this decision does is basically say that achieving diversity is not a compelling government interest. That's the ruling. It could have been broader than that, which would have applied to more than just colleges and universities. Keeping it at just keeping the ruling at just something like, that diversity in higher education is not a compelling government interest means this ruling likely only applies to affirmative action in colleges and universities. But that is not to say that like the court wouldn't go further in another case that brought a broader issue, right? Mm-hmm. One thing I wanted to say about the effect of the effect on sort of the racial demographics, the racial breakdown of colleges and universities in the US. There are states, I want to say, I don't think it's more than 10 or 12. It might be in the single digits. There are states already that under state law, they have prohibited, struck down affirmative action. They don't allow it in higher education in the state. California is one of those states. They passed Proposition 209 back in 1996 or 1997.
Yeah, 96.
Yeah. And it had a massive effect on the admission of Black and Latino students in colleges across California. We talked to, this is now a couple of years ago, we talked to Erwin Chemerinsky, who's the dean at Berkeley, and he mentioned this. And then I saw him in a randomly saw a recorded video of him again today talking about this. But for the law schools at UCLA and Berkeley, so this isn't undergrad population, this is just the law schools at UCLA and Berkeley. In 1998, 2 years after Proposition 209 had been passed, the number of Black and Latino students at those two law schools had fallen by 50%. There were years, Chemerinsky says, where, the incoming class at Berkeley Law would have one Black person. It is a massive, massive impact to do away with affirmative action. And I think like the fallout is that, so I work at a law school now. I work at UT Law. And we got an email from the dean today that said, like, we are abiding by the ruling, all that shit that deans have to say, but we are looking at our options for still creating a diverse student population, right? So some people are saying, and it says explicitly in this opinion, John Roberts says, this opinion doesn't disallow school administrators and admissions offices from taking into account other things like economic background of a student, or even if a student personally discusses, say in a personal statement, how race has impacted their life, right? That is still really, really difficult. You see, obviously, in the California example, right? Chemerinsky saying, even at a school like Berkeley Law, that would still be trying to achieve a diverse student population, how badly that impacted the diversity of their student population. And then I think another fallout, not only is it like just so much more difficult to do, another kind of consequence is that some schools are just going to abandon diversity as a goal, right? There are just going to be some schools that are just like, it's just not something we're gonna try to do because of how difficult it is, and because this whole system is now invalidated for how we could have done it in the past.
Right.
Yeah. Somebody asked about why a private university, why the court has jurisdiction here. And I just want to note, they drop it in a footnote. It wasn't seriously contested. Title VI as the court says, Title VI provides that no person in the United States shall, on the ground of race, color, or national origin, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any program or activity receiving federal financial assistance.
Right.
And then the court has said in the past that they basically construe that law as to be the same as the same legal standards as the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment.
Yeah.
So the analysis is the same because Harvard receives federal funding. It's subject to Title VI and therefore subject to the same standards under the Equal Protection Clause, although it's under a statute rather than the 14th Amendment.
Right. But yeah, that's why there were two cases here. Again, one against UNC, a state school, and one against Harvard, a private school, because they had those different rationales, and people were
same legal standard but different source of legal force. One is the 14th Amendment, although one is Title VI.
Going into it, I think that there were thoughts that the court would go and could go in completely different directions, and basically say the Equal Protection Clause applies to UNC. Private schools were going to be much more hands off, but that is, of course, not what they did.
It was. I mean, it's like 240-page opinion, and we did a lot today. So but I think Gorsuch hinted in a concurrence that he's not on board with the idea that Title VI is sort of like coterminal with the Equal Protection Clause, and is like, I don't know about this, but nobody really contested it. So
I saw that like on Twitter, but I also didn't dig in.
Yeah, I think Roberts mentions it like in his opinion, but I didn't get like too into it. So who knows? Maybe this will be something in a few years that is another new conservative cause. But for now, that's how it is.
Peter, pull up a
a picture of Cosmo. A picture of Cosmo. Yeah, I saw this. All right, hold on.
Pull up a picture. I mean, I can't get it out. Pull up a picture of Cosmo and show it on the camera, buddy.
There you go, Cosmo.
Look at that little muffin.
She's so cute.
What I don't know a lot about cat. I mean, I love cats, but she's called Calico, right?
She's a Calico, yeah.
Yeah. So cute. I love that. Okay. Rhiannon, what are your sign placements? Oh, so glad you asked.
I'm gonna go get a beer.
I am I think I said, certainly I've said this in whatever episode it was where I did everybody's birth charts, but I am a Virgo sun. I'm a Virgo. My moon is in Taurus, and I am a Capricorn rising. If you know anything, that means all my big three are earth signs. So, essentially I came out of the womb and was like, let's fix the world. That's what your big three being earth signs essentially means. Michael, when I see 5-4 podcasts commenting in the chat, is that you?
That's me.
Oh, okay. I was like, whoa, Ghost Podcast is an entity now. Okay, I saw one more. Could we solve these problems by painting a tunnel onto a wall by the road outside the Supreme Court? For Brett Kavanaugh, absolutely. He'd be done for. I think we could probably throw Amy Coney Barrett into there as well. She would definitely fall for that. So yeah, I mean, you get 2 conservatives right there. That makes 4 conservatives on the court. You've done what you needed to do. Excellent idea. Again, I love the energy. I love the creativity that is being brought here. Michael, we talked about today, you had seen a couple of announcements for cases that the Supreme Court was taking next term. Some of them very, very disturbing.
Yes.
Does not bode well. Do you want to talk about like a couple that you saw today? I know the gun case, which some people have asked about. Go ahead.
So that's like a Fifth Circuit case, Rahimi, I think it's called. And the Fifth Circuit. So a couple years ago, I think we did an episode on Bruin, but I don't know if we did.
Yeah, we did an episode on Bruin.
we've done so many at this
I
point.
know.
I like assume we did one because how could we not? But also I
Right.
don't remember it.
That was very good.
So Bruin was a Second Amendment case, which sort of created a new standard for how to evaluate laws to see if they conform with the Second Amendment. That says you have to find sort of similar historical analogs. Like you have to find something that looks the same, but from like 1795 or 1804 or whatever. It's a really stupid standard for a lot of reasons. But now in the post-Bruin world, what you have are some lower court judges going a little crazy with it. And that includes a law that prohibits people under domestic violence restraining orders from possessing firearms.
This is a law across the country. I would be surprised if any state does not have this law, even in gun rights Texas, right? You are not allowed, if you are on a domestic violence related restraining order, you are not allowed to possess a firearm. It's massive. Yeah.
Now, you will be shocked to know that the founders did not have much of a point of view about domestic violence at all, let alone care about it.
Right.
So there are no historical analogs to this, at least in like a literalist sense. You could talk about other laws that might strip certain people of their rights under certain
what about,
circumstances.
and I didn't read that opinion in full, but what about like general criminality?
Yeah, so there are definitely like, it just depends on what sort of approach you take. And so I think some people are like, fingers crossed. And maybe the court took this to, chastise the Fifth Circuit. But I don't know. I'm not holding my breath, man. I don't feel good about it, personally. So.
Yeah. Was there another one that you were like,
yes,
this is
somebody else pointed out to me. It's called SEC. Jerkeezy. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. Jerkface. The Security Exchange Commission v. Jerkeezy, I think, which very much takes aim at just like whether the SEC is able to assess civil penalties via its normal sort of like administrative adjudication process, or if that violates like your Seventh Amendment rights to a jury trial, whether there are like non-delegation issues with the SEC that would render a lot of it unconstitutional, whether certain positions need to be more sort of fireable, I think. For cause removal protection, whether there's too much for cause removal protection in the SEC. And so basically president should be able to like fire a bunch of judges and administrative law judges and replace them with their handpicked cronies. Very concerning about, I mean, the court is in a sort of an ongoing attack on what we in the law call the administrative state, all the administrative agencies that popped up in the last 60, 70 years that handle a huge amount of our governance, our day-to-day governance. But the SEC obviously is in charge of a lot of financial instruments and financial institutions, which is already an under-policed area in our country that's like rife with crime and corruption. So gutting one of the only like real regulatory bodies in that space would be disastrous.
Yeah. Also
going hand in hand with a direct challenge to the constitutionality of the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which has a very unusual funding structure that basically gets money through the Federal Reserve. So conservatives challenged it early this year, and that'll be next term. Do they just get rid of the CFPB? That is a very real possibility, I think.
Well, someone asked, and I wonder, we probably have 15 or 20 minutes left, or
Sure.
what? Yeah.
Yeah.
So feel free to ask fun questions. It doesn't have to be about this fucking term. Thanks for hanging out tonight, y'all. Yeah, let us know what you want to hear about. But how can originalists ignore and distort the context of the 14th Amendment and why it was created in such a blatant way? We talk a lot about on the podcast about this, but I think it's really important to think about all Supreme Court jurisprudence as being an exercise of power, right? Conservatives have power in the Supreme Court right now. That means that conservatives have the power to say what the law is, to interpret the law, make rulings that apply to the entire country. And so their interpretation of what the 14th Amendment means is the interpretation, right? That's relevant right now. It's it's not a satisfying answer, and it's not an answer that you actually learn in law school, or that you learn about how judges make decisions and how law develops over time and how doctrines of jurisprudence develop over time. But it is the reality, right? And I think that probably makes what we say on the podcast, or at least in the beginning of our podcast, that's probably what made us unique, as we were just talking about it in those terms. And I think over the past couple of years, for sure, I think that's really played out for people in reality now, right? The Supreme Court interprets the law however the fuck they want to interpret the law. And that's what they're doing right now, right? So they say the 14th Amendment means this. Everybody else is like, that doesn't make sense, but it's what they say.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 14th Amendment is maybe the most glaring example, because it was something that was passed to, as sort of a frontal assault on the post-slavery South, and is now being interpreted to eliminate affirmative action, and other constitutional protections are being undermined. So I think it's very visceral in that sense. But just as an example, Clarence Thomas's originalism about the First Amendment is ludicrous. There's
right.
There's
the Second Amendment, right?
Right. I mean,
wild.
It's I think less on the surface obvious to someone who's just a casual observer, but there are student speech cases, for example, where Clarence Thomas says, at the time of the founding, teachers taught and students listened.
Right.
Just what are you talking about? How do you you don't think that they were misbehaving children at the time of the founding? Just this sort of really, really transparently idealized version of history. And that's what he sort of carries forward, and all of them carry forward into their analysis of the 14th Amendment. I just think that that's where it sort of brushes up against everyone else's understanding of it, such that your mind kind of revolts.
Yeah, you can hear more about that on my guest episode on this day in esoteric history, where I talk about the original understanding of the First Amendment, some very strident laws that we would all consider obviously unconstitutional now, but were passed by the founders, like fucking John Adams, guys who wrote the Constitution were jailing people for yelling at them in the street. The First Amendment meant something very different at the founding.
But what about wedding websites?
Exactly.
What happens first? Democrats adopt court reform, or Peter puts up the shelf?
Fucking sun consumes the earth.
We're gonna be waiting a long time.
Somebody asked if Ree and I listened to If Books Could Kill. I just want to say I am a subscriber, a paying subscriber to If Books Could Kill. I'm in the Mile High Club, baby. I love it. It's a great podcast. It's the only podcast I listen to.
I was going to say, Michael doesn't really listen to podcasts, and but does listen to If Books Could Kill. I admittedly listen a little bit less, but I've probably listened, Peter, I've probably listened to maybe
You don't have
like
to like
over
answer to
half.
me. Like I didn't.
No, I know, but
You
like
guys can live your own lives. All right.
we've never really talked about it. But I've listened to more than half of your episodes, and I'm also a paid subscriber. But I don't.
I'm
don't
going to be honest. We
one.
never talked about it because that made me sort of assume that you just didn't listen. So the fact that you listened to maybe half sounds great to me. That's a lot more than I
That's
thought.
more than you thought. Ree, if Michael and Peter fight, who would you put your bet on? Me.
Yeah.
Why do people's minds go to such violence? How about who would win in a hugging contest?
We would all tie.
Yeah. Ree, do you have any cat names in mind? I'm thinking for the orange one. I'm thinking Jaffa. Jaffa is the city in Palestine where my family is from. And if you're familiar, in Arabic, it's Jaffa with a Y. But in a lot of English-speaking countries in like Britain, the city is called Jaffa. So if you've heard of Jaffa oranges, for example, orange, like originally they come from Palestine. Citrus, very large agricultural export of my people. So Jaffa, orange cat. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I don't know about the black one, but we'll do something. We'll do something good. So I had 2 dogs for a long time when I used to be married, and in the divorce, my ex-husband got the dogs. But it's okay. I got the house. We're fine. But we had a big pit bull, and we always thought it would be so funny to have a pit bull and like name them something ridiculous like Sprinkles or something like that. So our pit bull was named Queso. Queso. He ruled Queso. So we'll come up with something good for the black cat. I saw something. Oh, one more substantive that I thought was a good question, y'all, was can you talk a little about KBJ, about Justice Jackson's opinions this term?
From Lori, our long time.
Was that Lori?
That was Lori.
Fuck yeah, Lori. Hi, Lori. Yeah. You've said before that the left needs someone to be as steadfast to leftist ideals as Thomas is to the right. How's she doing so far? I have not read it all, but I'll just say that as far as I've gotten in her dissent in the affirmative action case, it's fantastic.
It's
really
great.
Good.
Really, really good.
So is Sotomayor's, but Jackson. And then she is, I think Peter just mentioned this earlier in our stream, that she's the sole dissenter in Glacier Northwest, the labor case, and speaks incredibly compellingly about the rights of workers in that dissent.
Yeah.
Other thoughts from y'all about where she's been at this term?
Just something that I would have tweeted at the time, but I'm, as my little headline says here, banned from Twitter. I think this is a real lesson to make sure you are listening to people who know what they're talking about on certain subjects, because there was a lot of bullshit floating around during her confirmation that maybe she would be weak on labor. And then in the first big labor case, she is the strongest justice on the court on labor. Yeah. So we never thought she would be weak on labor. I feel like you could go back and listen to our episode and it holds up. We cast doubt on the motivations of the lawyer who was trashing her publicly about her labor positions. And just listen to us. Don't listen to the fucking losers out there.
Yeah.
We know what we're talking about. I mean, maybe not if we're talking about like something other than the courts, then listen to experts on that shit. But
well, in general, I mean, I think my response to this is that she seems elite.
Yeah, she's great. She's great.
The only remaining question, and we probably won't know for like a year or so, is she the best justice on the court or the second best?
Right.
That's really it. She seems to be to the left of the others on at least a couple of issues. And I think that anyone concerned that she was going to have these sort of like hidden reactionary tendencies, I don't want to say proven wrong, but we certainly haven't seen anything close. And all the issues that people were ostensibly worried about, like Michael mentioned, people had concerns about labor rights based on like really abstruse readings of individual cases, that just seems to have been flat out wrong. So I think so far she's been fantastic across the board, including like an oral argument, which I don't particularly care about, but it's always cool when someone's good at it.
Yeah, I agree. People are asking about strict scrutiny. We're going to quell the beef, I think. We need broad left and center left solidarity.
Are people asking about beef?
Yeah, they are.
So was there beef on Twitter or something?
Was there beef on Twitter?
You know, law
Minor
professors say stupid shit, I think is what can be summed up as. But like,
Yeah.
you know,
We enjoy some snark. You know,
Yeah.
it's lighthearted. It's lighthearted.
They can be smart and great professors and wonderful commentators on the law, and they can also just like sometimes say dumb shit.
Yeah.
I listen to that
platforms for the
podcast more
best.
than almost any other. It's probably like my top 4 podcasts in terms of like consistent listening. Although mostly for professional purposes, but still.
Leah is probably the academic I have whose writing I've used the most in doing research for this podcast.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Her academic work's really good.
Yeah, and we've cited her a bunch on the podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't listen. I don't listen to strict scrutiny.
I mean, like I said, I don't listen to any podcasts other than If Books Would Kill. So.
Yeah, I listen to pop culture podcasts a lot. I listen to Las Culturistas. I listen to Seek Treatment. What else do I listen to? I listen to some lefty stuff. Red Nation podcast. I'm so bad with names. The East is Not a Podcast, I think is what it's called. It's leftist. Millennials Are Killing Capitalism. Stuff like that. Oh yeah, This Land. Thank you, Megan. This Land I cannot recommend enough. And they just I think Rebecca Nagel just updated This Land based on the most recent Supreme Court cases on Indian law and Native rights. I think there's 2 new episodes of This Land.
I want to say one more thing about strict scrutiny. Sorry.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Someone in the chat said, "Yeah, but y'all pissed them off." I think I pissed them off. I think I did. I tweeted. I think I specifically tweeted, screen grabbing. I think 3 or 4 different articles that they had written in the prior year, all of them taking the same sort of tack of downplaying how extreme the court could get in the name of being like, but it could still be pretty bad. And I said I didn't think it was a useful or productive way to take advantage of a large platform. I think that pissed them off. I also think they know I'm right because I think they have started
quelling the beef.
I think they've started being a little more like, yeah, we should stop being like, they might not be extreme, but it's still bad, and saying they're really fucking extreme. They have shifted their rhetoric in maybe not in response to me, but in response to events, which I think sort of vindicates my point, right? Like
I do think that the
downplaying Bruin and the threat to abortion and all that stuff was not a good use of a Washington Post op-ed. I'm sorry, it wasn't 2 years ago. It wasn't. Like, that's a precious commodity. You get to talk to millions of people about an important issue. Like, you got to let them know what the stakes are. They did it, but now they are. So good for them. I'm glad.
I mean, I think it's just as likely that some of the snarky shit we've said about them on the podcast, which is just like once or twice, they took a little personally, which is fair. Fine. We're not. We could be nicer.
If you're an academic and you can't handle some public criticism,
I could not.
Like, come on, like
I don't. It's very hard for me to care about this stuff.
Rhiannon, do you identify as a reader, publicist, Katie, or finalist? This is a Las Culturistas inside joke. I am a reader, son, publicist, rising. Let's say that.
I have to answer a question I saw earlier, which is what's the statue in the background? That is a limited edition John Roberts bobblehead gifted to me by Jay Willis of Balls and Strikes. There you go.
If you'd like a close up here.
I'm not going to, but if I flipped my my laptop screen, my camera, mine is right there.
Yeah. If if you move to the top of the left-leaning Supreme Court analysis game, every now and then you get a free bobblehead.
Yeah, that's right.
John Boberts.
John
Why haven't
Boberts.
we said that before?
It's good. It's good.
And people have repeatedly asked for a clear view of your shirt, Michael, which I want them to see because it's a gift.
That's
A
right.
gift that I got him, and I got Rhiannon. Not that she's ever worn it.
There you go.
I'm gonna burn it.
I wear it all the time. I love it.
It is.
I think you wore it to the Austin live show.
I
didn't
did
you?
wear it to the Austin live
Yeah,
show. That's correct.
Yeah.
that was a
When you
live
see
show.
something like that on Etsy and it only costs $78 to ship to your friends,
You do
it
it.
wasn't even a decision.
All right. How do we wrap? How do we wrap our first live stream?
We tell people what we should have told them at the beginning, not to be cheesy, but if you're enjoying this, be sure to like and subscribe. That's what you do.
Yeah, we're in the YouTube game now.
We're in the YouTube game, guys. This is just the beginning. We are very excited you're all here with us, but you got to be on the channel's subscriber list if you want to, you don't want to miss any more of these.
Yeah. We will get better at execuing streams in the future.
In the future, they will not be
some of us,
10
who I
minutes
will
late.
not name, will improve drastically.
I think I was perfect tonight.
I was very plainly referring to myself.
Thank you so much, everybody, for just like hanging out on a Friday night with us. Doing this. A lot of fun. We're really excited to do like more YouTube stuff, more video stuff coming up. We're figuring all of it out. Thank you if you are a subscriber. We love you. I say it, I feel like I say it all the time. I probably don't say it enough, but we never knew that 5 to 4 would be what it is today. We never expected it. It's 100% because of y'all and subscribers. And we are so grateful, so appreciative. If you are a subscriber, we love hearing from you about what you want us to talk about, what you want us to cover, what do you want YouTube live streams to be about, all of that stuff. So please do get in touch on Slack, on Patreon, all of that. Thank you, everybody. Even if you're not a subscriber, thank you for listening. We love you.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks, y'all. Happy weekend. It's going to be okay.